anyway, I'm supposed to talk about the OpenRAN market in the context of Evanstar. So I've been involved in Evanstar for some time. So my name is Stéphane Teral. I run my old boutique, Teral Research, but I'm a former in phonetics research, IHS market. So I've been doing wireless infrastructure tracking since the beginning of this century, when Ericsson actually willing to penetrate the US market came to me and say, there is not that much going on in this market. Remember at the beginning of this century? But it's going to move at some point. So would you be able to come up with a model to track the deployments and everything? And I said, yes. So that's what I've been doing. Thank you very much, Cliff. Mon sauveur. Since the beginning of this century. So I was saying, why are we here? Well, Steve, gave you a little overview about why we are convening here. We're trying to feed the baby and grow the baby to a big boy to actually offer more options to the radio unit market in the world for OpenRAN. OpenRAN, what does it mean? First thing to think about is you open the fronthaul interface such that you can plug any kind of radios you want to the system. And I'm not getting into the system between the disaggregation of the BBU between DU, CU, because the topic here is this. So let's look at the OpenRAN market, and you'll see that it's a reality. So we started to track this OpenRAN market since the beginning. In fact, I was part of the first discussions back in 2012 at AT&T. AT&T, burned by the iPhone in 2007, throwing more RNC to the equation was like, this is brute force, unsustainable. We need to do a better job than that. So they disaggregated the RNC, which eventually became the RIC, Radio Access Network Intelligent Controller, but also disaggregated the baseband units, and we're looking at how to push some of the functions onto software with virtual machines. That gave birth to the domain to Dado at AT&T, the X-RAN Alliance, and all that stuff to eventually create 2018 the O-RAN Alliance. But TIP on its own is coming from Meta, well, Facebook, and the idea was to bring connectivity to the 3 billion people who don't have connectivity. But thinking about Mark Z, of course, you bring connectivity to these people thinking they're going to have a Facebook account, right? If they don't have a connectivity, they don't have a Facebook account. So that's, the idea. But at least that was good because TIP has been behind disaggregation for every domain in network architecture, transport. Here is the radio access network, and you can see the activity. So this is still in the Telecom Infra Project TIP map. We have actually more folks doing OpenRAN than what is being shown on the map. This is just, the reason is the other service providers don't want to be seen on the map, but it gives you a good overview of where we are. So the largest deployments in the world are in Japan. Actually, you start with Rakuten Mobile. They started the deployment in 2020. Completing all the testing in 2019 as the fourth operator introduced by Abe-san, former prime minister, back in 2018 to challenge the three existing players. So from our report published in March with the update for 2023, Rakuten Mobile has more than 60,000 sites, open vRAN sites, because everything is virtualized. In fact, some is in the cloud. And that means you have right there more than 350,000 radio units active. So, we're talking about nice volumes. Then that does not stop there, and this is the subject of our report we publish tomorrow. Japan is the world's first VRAN, open VRAN nation, because with the Rakuten momentum, Abe-san, put that on the agenda as part of 5G. You guys, KDDI, NTT Docomo, SoftBank, let's do it as well. They all embraced it, and they are all doing their own thing, but particularly NTT Docomo was first to actually ask its vendors, Ericsson, Nokia, Fujitsu, NEC, to open up the front hall in LTE using the ETSI interface, right? On 5G, the same guys, plus they added Samsung using the ORAN interface. KDDI has been pushing Open VRAN from the beginning, so now NTT Docomo is actually migrating to Open VRAN. Then the next, deployment, important deployment is Dish in the US. It's pretty much 20,000 sites, 120,000 radio that we have open radios, mainly Fujitsu and Samsung actually here, as opposed to Rakuten Mobile, where you have Nokia, NEC, Sercom, Airspan, Fujitsu, plenty of radios, large variety. So this is the world we are talking about. Now, this is another perspective. It shows all the organizations involved in this huge global Open RAN ecosystem. And particularly, you have governments putting money on the table, like the US, with the NTIA, US Department of Defense, with $1.6 billion to make sure that the ecosystem stay alive, because as you have heard from what I said about the deployments, not everyone had a chance to eat the pie, and this is that creates difficulties, and we have actually some casualties. I don't know if you looked at Airspan, bankruptcy, we predicted that, but look at NEC. NEC failed actually, as opposed to Fujitsu that is on board with the AT&T deal, along with Ericsson. NEC didn't manage to get a nice large deal and got kicked out of Telefonica, which was a front runner in Europe. And as a result, NEC got bailed out again by NTT Docomo. So they merged their, NTT Docomo as Orex. It's a platform which looks like more than Rakuten Symphony with NEC system integration business, and that created Orex SAI. This was announced at MWC, but I can spend an hour talking about how things, are unraveling in this ecosystem, because you need a market. The market is not big enough right now to have all these players, but having said that, you need actually all these players to make, a long-term market sustainable. At the same time, you need to do testing, validation, certification for large operators like AT&T in the US, but think about Deutsche Telekom, Telefonica, Orange, Vodafone here, the front runners in Europe. So this is, another illustration, and thank you, Mavenir. So you may have heard of Mavenir. This is the rising US champion. This is what I call a $1 billion experiment. Yes, that's all the money they have raised to stay in business. Complaining about the lack and actually being involved. They have, they are involved in pretty much more than 30 projects in the world. They have active deployments, particularly, for example, in India, where they are replacing Huawei and ZTE at Bharti Airtel as part of the 5G deployment, but also replacing 4G from ZTE and Huawei. And, what they found 2 years ago was the lack of radio units, which is, sounds very good for Evanstar. So as a result, they decided to build their own radio units. So it takes a village, right? But it takes $1 billion. But hey, look, they did this before at the beginning of this century. If you remember Mytel, interesting acquisition that actually generated huge returns. So the chairman, Hubert de Pesquidou, former Alcatel employee like myself, is confident. He's also a partner at Sirius Capital, and he's the guy who is bringing all, the $1 billion. But anyway, from that, you can see that you have a huge, again, ecosystem, and we need to have a market so the market basically did this because of Rakuten Mobile. So we hit the $1 billion bar, plus Dish as a relay. We passed $1 billion, 1.3, 1.4 something. But then we are here in a lull because we are waiting for the next growth, which is starting next year, because we have AT&T on the one hand, because the Japanese are doing their things, but they are not really driving huge numbers. It's very pragmatic and a pragmatic approach. So now we have AT&T, but we have Vodafone. We'll hear the results of the selection, I guess, at Fuse in November in Dublin. So that's going to be, big news. But you have other folks. Deutsche Telekom is also deploying small footprints. But what I mean is, we're getting there with larger and larger footprints. And thank you, François, for, forcing me to realize that if I only show the bottom curve is going that way and it looks like a bubble. No, this is the context, and we had that discussion with Duncan from Jabil about, pretty much 5 million radio units being shipped in the world. And you see it's bumpy depending on the cycles, but you still need to add radio units. And at the bottom, it's the penetration of the OpenRAN radio units. So you see that even by the end of the decade, we need more. This is based on service provider demand, as we know as of now. So we update this on a regular basis. So our subscribers, they know about it. We are getting new information all the time. We update. But you see, there is a market. And that market can accelerate, It's just need a tier 1 CSP that pulls the trigger, and boom, you have, all of a sudden an improvement in this situation. Evenstar. So this is what was presented at Fuse in November 2022, and we had discussions with Jabil as a potential manufacturer. But this is a very simple design, right? And at Teral Research, we did actually some modeling for very specific bands, LTE bands, but now we have to do it again because things have changed. But back in 2022, it was replacing the old LTE radios in Europe that were consuming too much energy with, a very light design like this. So what I'm saying is, we need to find the niches. They are, because the energy problem has not disappeared, right? So this is where we were left at. Now it has been taken over by OCP. So what do we need to do? Well, let's carry on, because this is a fantastic project to change market dynamics with a cheaper radio, because this is pretty much an oligopoly, and if you look at the pricing, we collect ASPs on a regular basis, and some of these radios are just crazy expensive. We want to bring that down, to a $1,000 something radio, which looks like the price of a small cell. Well, we can also argue about the power, 250 milliwatt, but we need a little bit more power than that, depending on the sweet spots, and particularly use cases. But only the sky is a limit, because there is a need at the end of the day, but we need to be smart and very tactical to identify the need that's going to be successful from day one. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I say thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you, Stéphane. Thank you very much.